Hi everyone, if you're applying for architecture course in Nepal and you have come across the word aptitude test, then this video will cover everything you'll need to know. So let's begin. First, let's understand what the word aptitude means. So Oxford Dictionary defines aptitude as a natural ability or skill at doing something. So naturally, an aptitude test for architecture will test you for your natural ability and skills to practice architecture. But you may have a question, why only architecture? Why not every other engineering field have an aptitude test like this? And the answer is simple. Unlike other engineering, architecture is a combination of engineering and art. And if you have already given the entrance exam and scored well, you have already proven your worth for studying engineering. An aptitude test will test your art side of architecture. This does not only mean art as in drawings, but this also means art as in literature, philosophy, and so on. Now that you have understood this, let's move on and explain the structure of this video. First of all, I'll discuss about the timing of the test and who are the test takers. Second, I'll discuss about some details of this aptitude test. And finally, I'll give you some tips and tricks for your test. So for this video, we'll focus on the aptitude test taken by colleges in IOE. And it's almost similar in other universities as well, so you can check the official notice for confirmation. So in IOE, the sequence goes like this. First, you give your entrance exam. Second, you get your results published along with your rank. Third, the priority form is open and you can fill up your priority form. And fourth, all the colleges announce their aptitude test dates. All the government colleges, that's Pulchar campus, Himalaya Engineering campus, ERC and Chitwan Engineering College, they hold their own aptitude test, but you don't need to worry about the tests overlapping with each other because they already plan for it. And normally the results are not carried over. This means that if you want to study architecture in one specific college, you'll need to pass their own aptitude test. So one thing that you'll need to remember is that if you've selected architecture as one of your priorities in any of these colleges, your name will automatically be listed for the aptitude test in that college. And you will also be required to pay an extra fee to attend this test. It's normally around 500 rupees per college, but you can check your official notice. Now, when it comes to private colleges, it's a little different. The aptitude test for government colleges are held first. After that, each of the private colleges announce their own dates. So most of the private colleges will let you study architecture if you have already passed aptitude test in one of the government colleges. However, colleges like Himalaya Engineering College will actually give you some scholarships if you score really well in their aptitude test. Now let's move on to the second part, some details about aptitude test. So aptitude test is taken because they want you to understand what architecture is and why is it different from other engineering before you actually join the course. Normally this test is around 1 hour long and the full marks is 50 and you'll need to score around 20 marks to pass this exam. However, in the results, the marks is actually not revealed and your result comes as either pass or fail. So aptitude tests normally have a combination of written questions and drawing questions that we'll discuss later in this video. But the most important thing that you need to understand about aptitude test is that it wants to know if a student has understood what architecture is, has explored what architects do, and has some basic drawing skills that they will require during the architecture course. Now let's move on to the tips and tricks. Tip number 1, don't be scared. It's a simple test and the questions are normally subjective. And if you have done an hour of research and watched this video till the end, you're good to go. Tip number 2, make sure that you have all the stationery items. I'll give you a checklist for items that you'll need to take to the exam hall, starting with number 1, a pen. This can be a ball pen, ink pen, maybe a pilot pen, anything works. Second is pencils. I recommend you to take at least 3 different pencils, 2H, HB, and 2B. I'll explain to you the use of all these pencils later in this video. Third is a ruler or a scale. I personally recommend a plastic scale. Fourth is a sharpener, and fifth, an eraser. Now tip number 3, you need to research about architecture. Now this means you can find a good definition of architecture in the internet or any dictionary. And you'll also need to remember at least one national and one international architect, and it's really helpful if you can remember one building designed by them. And additionally, you can also research about what architects actually do and what impact does architecture have on society. Tip number 4, practice a few types of drawings. Now normally there are around 3 types of drawings that they ask you to draw. First one is freehand sketching. It's like a normal drawing that you do without use of scale. This type of drawings might be a simple sketch that's already given in a question paper and you have to copy the drawing. Or they might also ask you to draw your own house or things like that. Second type is orthographic drawing, and if you have given your entrance exam, you already know what it is. So I'm not going to go in details for this one, but I'll show you some of the examples on the screen. The third type of drawing they might ask you is 3D geometric shapes. Now they might ask you to draw one specific shape, or they might place a still life in front of you and ask you to draw it. Now before we move on to the next step, you need to understand what light, shade and shadow mean. Now imagine a 3D object, for example a sphere. Now imagine a source of light coming from one direction. If we draw a path that the light follows when it hits this object, we get the brightest part of this object. Now, as we move away from this point, the light fades away, leaving a dark corner in the opposite side. This is called shade. Finally, when the light falls on the object blocks the light that would have fell on the ground. This results in a shadow casted by the object. This shadow is always in the opposite direction from the light source. Now, one important detail to remember is that shade is always on the object and shadow is always outside of the object. While this process is applicable for a single 3D object, you can also use this for a set of 3D objects placed in front of you, which is called a still life. However, for a still life, you'll need to remember 3 additional things. The first thing is that the texture and opacity of an object might have a different impact on the way that you need to sketch it. Second is that the shadow of one object might fall on the other object. And third, that the proportion of 2 different objects should make sense. If you are drawing a dustbin and a banana, you need to make sure that the banana is smaller than the dustbin. So it's better if you practice some of these drawings before you attend the aptitude test. I'll provide some links for video tutorials that teach you how to draw 3D objects with light, shade and shadow in the description below. Tip number 5 is somewhat related to tip number 4. If the test asks you to draw a still life image, then remember that the person who is checking your paper doesn't know where the source of light in your room is, and also doesn't know what angle are you watching this object from. So a small hack is that you can imagine one source of light in your room and draw accordingly. And also you might adjust your angle a little bit to your comfort. Tip number 6 is practice lettering. So lettering simply means to write in capital letters using guidelines. So unlike other tests, you'll be given one plain sheets of paper without any guidelines, and you'll need to make your own guidelines to write your answer. Most of the aptitude tests will require you to write in capital letters using pencil. So make sure that you'll make your guidelines using faint pencil so that there's a contrast between your words and your guideline. So I'll give you an example of guideline that you can follow. So what you can do is make a guideline with spacing of 8 mm for your letterings, followed by a space of 4 mm between the 2 sentences, and make sure that you repeat this for the entire page. You can also draw a vertical guideline on the side of your page and mark this dimension beforehand, and you can use your scale to make these horizontal guidelines as per the dimension I've mentioned before. The best part about guidelines is that you don't need to erase all of these after you have already written your answer, but make sure that the lines are really faint and your answer is visible. And finally, tip number 7 is to use the right pencils. As I've already mentioned, you need to take at least 3 different pencils. The first one is 2H, second is HB, and the third is 2B. Let's talk about 2H first. 2H means that the lead of this pencil is a little hard and the strokes will be light. So naturally, you'll use this pencil to make guidelines, but make sure that you don't apply a lot of pressure. The next pencil is HB. HB is something that we use to draw line drawings and also for lettering. And finally, 2B. 2B means that the lead is in the softer side among all of these 3. So this pencil is used for shading. Make sure that you don't use this for lettering, because if you do, you might smudge your answers. So if you follow these tips, you'll do great in your next aptitude test. I'd like to thank all of you for watching this video till the end. I hope this was really helpful for you, and let me know if you have any questions about aptitude test in the comments below. I'll make sure to answer all of these questions.